start with the intro.
Sure. So really grateful and excited to have Dr. Kate Dovel here today to help you all think about how to put together a scientific poster. Kate is a colleague that I've worked with for many years, 7, 8. She has spent most of the last decade living in Malawi and just actually moved back within the last few weeks. So now joins us from Santa Monica with much better internet connection. She's a very experienced researcher and social scientist who does a lot of work about how men engage in care for HIV, and also has had a large focus on different modes of HIV testing, including use of HIV self-test kits. She's run randomized trials in Malawi and published really important work that's changed policy for the country, and has also been an amazing contributor to teaching and training and mentoring both UCLA students, but also a number of Malawi and early career investigators who have benefited from her wisdom. So really look forward to her presentation. She and I work on a lot of posters together. It seems like something that should be very easy, but it's actually incredibly difficult to put together a good poster. And so hope you guys find it useful. And it sounds like we'll have the slides for you afterwards as well.
Great. Thank you, Riza. And great to be with all of you. I'm so glad that you have the opportunity to do these research mini courses, and happy to be a part of it. And from what I understand, a lot of you have posters that you're currently preparing for later on in this month. So I'm glad that this is coming hopefully at a useful time for you. And just as a heads up, my style of teaching, of giving lectures is very communicative. So hopefully all of you are able to see the slides that I'm about to share and can feel free to jump in and let's discuss a lot of what happened about how to create a good scientific poster is about just looking at examples and critiquing those examples. So a lot of what we're going to do today is exactly that, critiquing examples of different posters, some good, some okay, and hopefully some that are well done. Yes, and like Riza said, I'm now, she said in the chat, also happy and privileged to join as the new director of the Pathway for Global Health. So some of you may be in contact with me in that capacity moving forward. So looking forward to getting to know you guys individually.
As of today, so perfect timing.
As of today, yes. All right, so let me share my slides with you and we can get started. And these will be available. Should hopefully be able to see them now. All right, hopefully you see them as like a big screen. Great. So these will be available now. I am drawing heavily on some other resources that are available from universities. We're not the first to try to provide guidance on how to do scientific posters. There's a lot out there. So you'll see throughout there's a lot of links and different resources that you can draw on as you're developing your poster. I provide a few here. Okay, so we're going to split this today into 2 sections. One is around developing and designing your poster. How do we do that? What are the kind of steps and the formatting? And then the other will be around preparing to actually present your poster, because it's not just about the poster itself, it's also about how you present it and how you interact with people, whether it be virtually or in person, on describing what your poster has. So first, what is the goal of a poster? So for a lot of you, you've now done research this summer, you've been able to work on projects and come up with some key results or some takeaways from your work. The goal of the poster is to be able to present some of those key findings in clear, visually accessible ways, and being able to kind of summarize what may be in a 12-page paper into a 5 or so minute read on a poster for individuals who are either walking by or joining via Zoom into your session in the time of COVID. always now interesting. So what is the most important part? So we want clarity in your poster. More is not better in this case. Actually, less is very much so better. We want it to be very clear and concise, and that it's your job as the author to tease out and filter out what are the most important points for your reader to get. It shouldn't be the job of your reader to have to assess and kind of go through a slew of paragraphs to find key takeaway points. That's your job. So you want to get at the most important points, and you have a couple different sections you have to cover. One is, why is the topic important? Why should we care about it at all? And so this would be considered a kind of your traditional background. And for this, you can have anywhere from one, probably more like 2 to 4 points on why your topic is important and why people should care. The second is, what did you do? This would be your method section on what was conducted. Again, the length of this will vary depending on what was done, but you want to give enough information that your reader can feel confident that they understand what you did and that they understand the limitations and challenges with the data set. So how much can they infer, or how much weight can they put on your findings? What did you find? And this should take up the bulk of your scientific poster. And this is your results section. This is where we would include some graphics. We don't want posters that only have a bunch of text. It's too heavy, it's too hard for readers to get through. We want to be able to have some graphics that draw people in, that can get your story across fairly easily. And then, why do these results matter? So this is where you tie it into your literature review, kind of bring it back to the background. And what are the next steps? So how is this different or similar to research that already exists? And what do you suggest is now becoming hopefully an expert in this field, in this little niche that you did research on? What do you suggest is the next steps? Either additional research, potential implications for programs or clinical activities, some of these points. And again, you're looking at trying to have somewhere between 2, tops 4 points for each of these questions. And the poster needs to be visually stimulating. It can't be heavy and full. That needs to be broken up really clearly so that readers can easily pick out the key points. Okay. So then with that, not surprising, and hopefully this isn't new for a lot of you guys, is what is then the layout for a poster? And we'll go through several examples here in just a second. First would be your title, and you want a catchy title, something that's easy to understand and kind of gets across the main point of your project. The authors and affiliation, include all of your authors and all of their affiliations. Something that Reason and I like to do is include the full name. So some people, because we can't have a lot of authors on these posters, some people will put the last name and just first name initial. If you have space, it's awesome to include the full name, especially when you're presenting at a place like UCLA, where people may know your colleagues and co-authors. So if possible, put the full name first and last, definitely all of the affiliations. And then you have these sections we just talked about: a background, setting and methods. Setting should be very brief, 1 or 2 bullets tops. Your results, discussion and conclusion, and then your references. And it is important to have references within a poster. We would expect at least 2 to 4, well, probably about 2 to 4 is about an average. So you would pick out the top, most relevant, high impact references from your paper or whatever you're working on to put into your poster. And then how you are funded. All right, so we have these different sections, but what can it look like? So I pulled 2 examples of just kind of the layout that's usually followed. Here's one of a more common, where you have these kind of almost columns within a poster. And posters, the size of the poster vary depending on the conference or the place that you're presenting. A lot will have specific requirements that you need to follow. So most important, not most, but very important, is before you get started at actually designing your poster, go to your conference, look at what are the requirements for this, and make sure that you're having the right either landscape or the right size for your poster. This is an example for a horizontal poster. A lot are starting to become vertical. I guess that's called portrait, isn't it? So here we would have typically, and I think you can see my cursor, that the column 1 would be background and methods. You see that the background is fairly short. Methods also fairly short. 2 and 3 would be maybe a little spillover of methods, but then primarily results. So this is where we're talking about that results should take up the majority of your poster. 4 would be your discussion, your takeaway points of how this relates to the existing literature, and next steps that should happen. And then down at the bottom of column 4 would be your references and funding. And this references and funding can be smaller font, that if people are interested, they can come close, they can look at it like very near, but the rest of the text should be large enough that people can read it from a distance. I know that kind of changes with Zoom presentations. So for example, if I was presenting these slides, my text, I would want to be no less than like 24 font in a proper presentation where we're all in the same room. Here, I think this is probably font 18 because I know that you're all looking at it on your computer. So it kind of does change what your font size can be. Here's another example of how the layout may go. And this is, in the end, it breaks down fairly similarly, but it's showing that this kind of top and center of your poster should be your main point. So your title, who's part of this, which is your authorship, and your results section. Then you would have, again, your methods, your background, your methods, your conclusion over on the far right, and then your funding, and any acknowledgements and other pieces like that. Okay. Any questions or thoughts thus far? I think actually, and I should have done this at the very beginning, for all of you students, it would be great to talk about your experience with posters. Have any of you created posters before? And feel free, I'm horrible at navigating this, and so feel free to go ahead and shout out.
I made one poster, but it was like 10 years ago now, so it's been a long time.
Okay, great. Thanks for speaking up. And then anyone else made a poster before? How many of you are working at developing a poster for the summer project for GSTTP? Can you guys do a raise of hands on your Zoom?
It should be everyone because it's required it's like sort of the final requirement, I believe. Correct, Tracy?
That is correct. Yeah, everyone has to present a poster at the Josiah Brown Poster Fair, but I don't know if they've started working on it yet. That's the question.
Okay, so all of you will be doing this. Good. And so then hopefully at this point, all of you have your project basically wrapping up. You have some data already done and now can start working on this poster section for the fair. All right. All right, so we have basic outlines here of how posters are usually presented. Again, we'll look at specific examples here in a second. But what are some key tips about making a good poster? And I think in general, the main takeaway of nothing else is that less is more. you really want to, again, it's your job as the author to go through and decipher what are the key points, what are the most important points that my reader needs to get. And those should be what's highlighted on your poster. It shouldn't be the job of the reader to go through huge chunks of text. Okay, so less is more on this. We want it to be catchy. We want it to be something people can get through in 5 to 10 minutes, 10 minutes tops, and really understand a synopsis of your project from the summer. So the title should be fairly short. It should draw people in and give a basic description about what you did. The general rule, if we're doing this in person, is that you should be able to read it from about 10 feet away. That means no paragraphs, right? That means that we're using bullets, we're using numbering and headings in order to make things easy to read. And in general, people suggest about 10 to 30% of your poster as just white space. So the goal here is not to fill up your poster full of text and pictures. You can almost think about it as kind of decorating home decor, right? Nowadays, having more stuff, more clutter on the wall, it doesn't make the home or the vibe better, right? Sometimes less is more, and that's the same for posters. Okay. You absolutely want to have some type of graphic, whether that be a table, a chart, pictures in your poster. Plain text can be a bit overwhelming and doesn't really draw readers in as much. So here we would think about usually 1 to 3 graphics. You may have a table in your methods section, depending on what you did. You may have a table or a graph in your results, and you could think about a picture if it was appropriate for the project. Okay, one key thing that somehow is really easy to not get right is consistency on your layout. So from the very beginning, when you start building your poster, consistently use the same bullets, the same indentation, the same style of having bold or not bold headings and subheadings. It seems little and it feels like something that you'll catch toward the end, but once you've been looking at the poster for long enough, you no longer see it. So better just to do it right and do it consistently at the beginning. And it does make a difference for readers and feeling like it's a finished product. Okay, and you do absolutely want to include acknowledgements, your funder, and references. And again, all authors' names, not just your own. Finally, you should include an email for yourself, or in other situations, you may work on another poster where you're not the contact author. The contact author should always have an email there on the poster so that people can reach out and ask further questions if desired. Okay. Any questions or thoughts on that? All right. So some examples, because I think the wording piece is hard. It's hard to kind of go from, you've been writing out your project, you've been writing out your results, and to go from this beautiful text that you're feeling now attached to and cutting it into more bullets, right? It's a tough thing. So here's an example. So I'll give you a second to go ahead and read through this description of the aim of the project, and then we'll look at then what was actually on the poster. And actually, I'll just read it out loud now. So it says, I can't seem to see it all. This project sought to establish the ideal specifications for clinically useful wheelchair pressure mapping systems, and to use these specifications to influence the design of an innovative wheelchair pressure mapping system, right? It's long, it's wordy, it has fairly kind of not standard language, right? But this is what's in the paper. This is then translated into 2 bullets for a poster. That aims of study, what is it? Define the wheelchair pressure mapping system, design a new system, right? We want to make it as short and simple as possible. this and Riza, and I think Karina's on as well. These guys can tell you this isn't necessarily an easy thing to do, to go from full text to less and less text. I certainly struggle with it. So oh shoot, sorry. And I started this over from the beginning. 1 second. There we go. So what may be helpful, what I find helpful is to go ahead and start with a full, almost paragraph version of a poster. So what you see on the far left side here. And it may be, and it'll have a lot of text and be more text than I need, but go ahead and fill it in, line it out so that I'm organizing the poster in the way that I'd like. I know all the information is there, and then go through 2 to 3 rounds of edits on that poster to keep simplifying the language, cutting where possible to get to what you see here as this middle poster. Which should have less text, right? But sometimes it's hard to do on the first go. You should expect to do several different renditions and edits here. So I think the main point here is give yourself time. You're not going to make your poster, or you shouldn't make your poster within a day or 2. This should be a longer process, potentially like a week of doing different versions. The other option that I like to do is also include a handout. Your session is going to be virtual for the summer, so a handout may not make complete sense, but in-person poster sessions, it's nice having a handout that gives a little additional information and is something that readers or the audience can take with them. And we'll talk a little bit more about handouts here in a second. All right, so we have about 5 different posters I want to go through, and let's just talk about the good and the bad. This one went ahead and outlined what's good, what's bad in it already. So here you see a poster. Clearly, these guys did a lot of work. They put in a lot of effort into their project. However, their poster isn't really reader friendly. It's not making the information accessible. You can't quickly see within a couple minutes what are the main takeaway points, right? There's too much text. It's not bulleted. There are too many graphs. You want to pick, again, 1 to 3 that emphasize the main point, right? You want to make sure all of your text is aligned and nice and neat. It's surprising how much this affects readers' ability to connect with your work and for it to feel like a finished product. Just the formatting makes a huge difference. And the thought of, for your affiliations, for pictures, keep those, and this is probably more of a preference thing, but I would say keep those in the body of your poster, not in the title. Let the title stand on its own. Others may disagree with that, and I think that's more of a preference thing that could go either way. All right. So, and it came out fairly blurry. Is this very blurry for you? So I was going to ask you guys to now take a minute. You cannot read it, but by looking at this, do you guys have any comments on this poster? And what are some of the challenges or things that may have gone wrong with this poster?
This one, like similar to the last one, seems like way too many graphs and a lot of crammed wording as well.
Yeah.
I think it'd be maybe helpful to have if you are going to have this many graphs, have them all in the same section, like a results kind of a little bit clearer together.
Yeah, I agree. And graphs that are a bit more intuitive, right? Again, this is very blurry, sorry, but if you're going to have graphs that aren't completely intuitive, you have to have a great description underneath, which this one didn't have. Anything else? Good. Let's go on. Okay, let's go on to the next one. And again, when you get these slides, you can see links to all the different websites that have further information about building out posters that you can look at. They have a lot of different examples. What do we think about this one? What do we see as some challenges?
The title, for example, it's a little busy and the color, not everything can be seen, as well as the little pictures, like icon things.
Yeah, exactly. The coloring and the little pictures are actually more distracting than adding to our understanding of the project. Totally agree. Anything else?
Oh, sorry. The organization is also very confusing. I can't differentiate between like a background or results or discussion.
Yeah, that's right. We need very clear and bold headings to show the different sections. Good. Yeah. Great. And if you're going to include figures and graphics, which you should, give them the space they need to really be seen. So the first graphic that's here, it's too small to really interpret or understand, right? All right, so now we're going to get into some real life examples of posters. I'm going to show a couple that we've done here in the past. This one is from one of the websites that I was referring to. From this one, what do you see as some of the pros and some of the cons? Any thoughts here?
It doesn't have the author's affiliations. I don't see that.
Yeah, I agree. I think the author's affiliations are needed. Good catch. Anything else? What do you guys like about it?
Wait, is the author's affiliations not the School of Nursing?
Is it?
I was just wondering, I saw School of Nursing on the...
Ah, I see. So you're right. So it's there. By seeing that, I would assume School of Nursing is maybe one of their affiliations, but not all. So usually for affiliations, we would put a superscript number behind each person's name. And then maybe down here where the acknowledgements are, we would put those superscript numbers with the name of each affiliation, just so it's clear. Because a lot of times you'll have some authors who are from different universities or different institutions.
Thank you.
Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, of course. What do we think about the background? Do you guys feel like that's clear?
I think it looks pretty clear. I was gonna say, I think a positive is that there's like there's graspable graphs and charts. There's one graph in the chart, and but that image in the procedure doesn't look like it needs to be that large.
Mm-hmm.
And like something else might be more like meaningful or useful to take up that space.
Yeah, I think that's a good observation. The picture doesn't necessarily help the reader better understand the study, and the space may be used for other things. Yeah, I agree. I do like that they have the purpose or kind of an overarching aim of the study in a bold or a way that it stands out. I think that's helpful. All right. And again, you'll have these slides. I just think it's helpful for you guys to have a couple different examples. All right, so now I'm going to show you some examples from our own work from different students and different colleagues in Malawi. Here's one poster that we did last year. And yeah, and again, we are open and to criticism. I think, looking at this from a year ago, based on what we just discussed, there's some clear things that we could have improved on this, right? What is one of the issues you see with this so far?
It's just a lot of words.
Yeah. That's right. There's a lot of words, and there's distinction on sections, but not a lot of distinction within each section, right? And this was qualitative, and I think qualitative can be a bit tougher with posters, but could think about less quotes for qualitative. You could think about the quotes being in a different color or in different boxes. I think there are some options to help break up the text. Yeah. Any other thoughts on this one? Okay. This one, we had a lot of references, a lot more than I usually would have. I think in general, 2 to 4 references, maybe 6 tops is enough, is plenty for a poster. This one we had a lot more because we were comparing and contrasting perceptions of providers versus what was seen in reality in the literature. So you'll see a much larger section for references, but that I think was unique to this poster. Good. And I'm happy to say this poster, Rose, is now going into 3rd year. This is under review at JADES, at one of our higher level journals for HIV research. So Rose has done really well moving this thing through. Okay. How about this one? What do you guys think about this? And I'll let you sit with it for a minute.
I personally really like the use of the bullet points. I found it easy to read, especially in the background, because that's usually more of a lengthy part of the poster, but it was very easy to get to the point. Not, I think things seem like relatively summarized well from the brief skimming I was going through.
Mm-hmm.
That's my positive.
Great, thanks. Yeah, I think the bullets work well here. I do think we could still look at even just slightly shorter text potentially, but it is less text. I agree. The other thing I would say with this one is, trying to get a graphic, maybe a bar graph here could have worked. Trying to get something in that is a little more visually appealing may have been helpful. And it's not essential, but I think if your data allows for it, it is helpful for the reader to have something more graphic to look at. Any other thoughts with this one? Great. Okay, and then this is the last one we're going to look at. Again, my hope here is just to give you some ideas of what posters can be. Karina and Riza, both here today, they also have a ton of examples of different posters that they've done. You can Google, and some of the links that I have can take you to some examples of different posters. So there are lots of different options. And I think one thing that I would like to promote here today is our ability to also help critically critique and give feedback to each other's posters, because it does happen when you've been looking at something so long, you've been working on your project for months now, you start not to quite see, what is that saying? The trees through the weeds, that's not it, but you know what I mean? You start to not see the details anymore and how to emphasize the most important bits. So I would really suggest, if you can work on your posters in advance, look at meeting with a colleague, with your mentor, with someone else here on this call today, give them your poster and get some critical feedback, and be able to give critical feedback to each other on what points are essential, how can you emphasize some of the more important takeaway points of your poster. Okay, with that, I'll give you a couple minutes to look at this one, and let's give some feedback on this one, and then we'll move on to the next topic. Okay, any thoughts on this one?
I like the use of color to point out the key topics and the components of the community health. I think it makes it a little easier to see. My only thought in the graph on the bottom right, would it have been better to still put the percentages there at the top, like the top right?
At the
Like,
top,
was there a way to make this graph a little cleaner?
yeah.
Is what I was wondering.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think a little cleaner and also a little more explanation around this graph and what we were looking at here would have been helpful. Yeah, as well as the numbers. So anytime you have a figure related to data from your sample, you should always include the N. What is your number that you're looking at? So you see in the tables 1 and 2, at the end of the title, we have N equals 75. We should have had the same thing for figure 1. So we're being just completely transparent with readers on what exact data they're looking at. Good. Any other thoughts on this?
I do like the layout. It's very easy to follow, and there aren't too many points under each heading. It can probably always be less, but it's definitely not busy. And the visuals are also like simple, clean, and easy to read.
One constructive criticism for it would be when I said the consistency, right, of formatting. We weren't consistent with formatting in this one. You can see here for the background and methods, our bullets have an indent. And then as you move into results and conclusion discussion, we've lost our indent. And again, this is where talking about once you've been looking at it so long, you lose sight of some of those small details. So do yourself a favor, do it right as you're developing it and keep the format consistent. Yeah, because looking back at this, that stood out to me as a just slightly unfinished edge for this poster. Good. Any other thoughts on this? All right. So here, and again, you'll get these slides. Here are some, there are references throughout here are some additional resources in order to either help you make a poster or for examples. And there are a ton of examples out there that you can look at. All right, but it's not all just about designing your poster. So it's also about how you deliver it. So let's talk about that. So once you have your poster actually designed, you're then going to have an opportunity to deliver or present your poster. And I believe, Tracy, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe for you guys, you'll have breakout sessions coming up. And in the breakout sessions, you'll have a group of people and you'll get a certain amount of time to describe your poster. Tracy, is that right? Okay. Or yeah.
If it's the same as, if it's going to be the same process as last year and same format, yes, each person will have, I think it's about a 5 or 10 minute session with it's a breakout room, and you get to describe your poster and answer questions and stuff.
Yeah. Okay, great. So you won't necessarily have as much of a need for this elevator pitch as you would in an in-person poster session. In an in-person poster session, you have people walking by and you're wanting to kind of bring them in. And then you want to have an elevator pitch that's just like a brief, less than 1 minute long spiel describing what your poster is about and why they should be interested, is to help kind of bring people in. So, sorry, in a meeting. So, sorry, working from home. But I think it's good for you to understand how to do an elevator pitch for in the future, if nothing else. So the goal of this, like I said, it needs to be kind of punchy, intriguing, and answer the kind of most relevant topics about what is your research on, what did you find and why is it important, and trying to get that to a brief little 1 minute session. And this is easier to do once you've completed your poster. I wouldn't try doing this necessarily before your poster or kind of your main work is done. Finally, you want to go ahead and develop a script of what you're going to say when you do this 5 to 10 minute description of your poster. And you don't want to read off your poster. Let me just say that again. You should not just read line by line what's on your poster. If that was the case, there's no reason for you to give a presentation. They can just sit there and look at the poster themselves, okay? You want to be able to describe your poster, but being able to add more detail where needed. A key for the script to make it most effective is to know your audience. Who are you talking to? Do they have any, or will they likely have any idea about the topic? Do you need to provide a good amount of background? Can you use acronyms, or will they be unfamiliar with these acronyms? Okay, so you want to really bring people in. And if you're unsure, you can do some research on who you're going to be talking to, and I would say, when you're doing the presentation, feel free to ask. So you can say, so for everyone here, have you guys heard of X before? For everyone here, have you guys done any work with prep? If I was doing a prep project, and if the answer is no, then I can go in and describe some more background than I would have otherwise. You can also use handouts. And again, this won't quite make sense for your presentation coming up this summer because it's virtual, but when you do an in-person poster presentation, handouts can be useful as a way of networking and as a way of getting your research out further. So basically on the handout, it'll be similar to your poster. You're going to kind of truncate your poster a bit, usually only including 1 or so graphics. Make sure that the title, name of all of the authors is there, and absolutely your email. And here's where you can also include any links to either a paper, if this has already been published, or a website if there's further information there. All right, any questions on that? Great. So the day has finally come. You've spent all summer doing your project. You've developed your poster. You've practiced your script, your spiel. Now you get to actually do it. You get to actually deliver it. And this is where I would say it is worth practicing. It's worth practicing talking through your poster. It oddly enough doesn't come necessarily intuitively that you spend all these hours developing your poster. It won't necessarily be natural to now talk about it for 5 to 10 minutes. You need to develop your script and you need to practice it several times before the actual day. And again, this one is more for when you're doing it in person, but you want to be approachable and welcoming as people are walking by your poster. Do not sit on your phone. Do not have your eyes down on the ground. You want to have your eyes up and be greeting people as they pass, be there and be clearly like welcoming people in to ask you questions. Like I already said, ask questions yourself as you have a crowd, and this you absolutely should do in your poster presentation later this month. Ask questions about, are people understanding? Do you need to go into further detail? Do people have any questions that they want to ask you? Allow it to be a conversation. And then finally, be flexible. So you have your script that you'll practice, but depending on who's coming, depending on who is asking you questions, you'll have to deviate from that script a bit. So make sure you know your literature, make sure that you're well-versed in your project. And I should have had it on here and I didn't, but be prepared for questions. So it may be helpful for you to, after you do your poster, sit and think through with your mentors, with other your fellow students, what questions can you anticipate people asking you, and prepare yourself for those answers. With these type of scientific posters, there's a handful of questions that typically come up, and we and other mentors can help you identify what those likely will be so that you have answers for them when they come. All right. So that is my kind of summary of scientific posters, how to develop them. And we have about 10 minutes. So with the 10 minutes, happy to take any questions. If you guys want to talk about anything about your specific projects as you're preparing, happy to talk through that with you. Any questions or comments?
Do you want to stop the screen share so then you can see if someone raises a hand?
Thanks, yes.
And yeah, just to emphasize a few things that Kate talked about that I think is, really important, is to start much earlier than you think you need to. And I know many of you are the summer just goes so fast and there's not enough time to often do a complete project. And you may not be where you thought you were going to be. So do talk to your mentor. Your poster doesn't have to be your final results. Your poster might be kind of a work in progress where you're sharing, a piece of what you did, or you're focusing on the methods, but you have the results. So it's just tricky to try to do a poster when you're partway through a project. So starting now to think about with your mentor what content will be on the poster, particularly if you don't have a completed project. Start early. Talk to your mentors about who should be listed as an author. For you all who have been LA based, there may be really critical people that you didn't meet with directly, but who should be listed or acknowledged. Really think about the authors being balanced from the host, partner and UCLA. And asking about the logos and funding that they'd like to include. Those are all really important.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Do we have, there's 2 due dates. There's a due date for the abstract, is that right, Tracy? And then the poster. Does everyone know the abstract due date?
I'm not sure I even know that, but it's usually just a few days before. Has anybody heard from Shamara about that? 14th. Thanks, Joy. July 14th.
Yeah, so sort of very similar to what Kate said. doing the abstract does not get you to the poster. So if you're going to focus and spend a lot of time on the abstract and say, I'll do the poster after that, that definitely tends to not be that helpful, because you really have to put so much more into the poster, more and less at the same time. So
Yeah, I agree. And I think, like we've just been saying, start early, and feel free to reach out. You don't need to do it alone. Ask your mentors. All of us are here. If you have any questions, happy to help answer questions along the way. Okay. So it looks like you guys have July 14th for everything, for abstract, poster, and a Zoom link. The students aren't creating a Zoom link.
They did it last year, so I think he's going to do the same this year. They all are creating their own Zoom links.
Okay.
Yeah.
do you guys also have the instructions on how long your session is and what you're supposed to do during that session? Gonna take that as a no.
Risa, I'll forward you the latest email I got from Shamar, just so everybody here, so everyone's aware that he sent to the students, that talks about their different groups and how it's going to play out.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think if people have questions, because I know this is only the second time that this is being done, that you should, feel free to ask for clarifications, because these things are important. Like, how many minutes do I actually have?
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Joy.
Each student talks for 35 minutes. Is that right?
I don't think so. I think that's just like the entire time. I'm just remembering from last year, it's 35 minutes for each group. And then within those minutes, I think it's between 5 and 10 minutes per session. But I can be like wrong as well. So we can confirm with Shamar's.
Yeah, so if Vegeta and or Tracy, let's confirm with Shamar and get a very specific answer, like how many minutes does each student talk about their project? Because that really does determine what how much content you should include, and informs the whole approach. So I think that's a good first step to clarify.
Yeah, I attended Senior Scholarship Day this year, but I did not attend the poster fair. And the Senior Scholarship Day, they had the floor for 35 minutes, but people were coming in and out, kind of like with a poster session where you would be standing there for a certain period of time and people would be coming in and out, but it was designated chunks of time within that 35 minutes. So I'm assuming it's going to be similar to that. I also just, you guys have already said this, but just want all of you to not hesitate if you just want some feedback on your poster, a fresh set of eyes. Sometimes when you're working on something for a long time, you just want, somebody else to take a look at it. And just feel free to reach out to any of us for that, because I definitely would be happy to do that. And as you're delivering it too, if you want a little bit of practice doing that, we're here for you.
And Karina also just offered to take a look also. So you've got lots of folks here who we're all happy to help.
Yeah. All right, great. Well, if nothing else, I will share the slides with Vegeta. Vegeta, you can share them out with everyone.
Perfect.
Great. And just making sure that everyone has my email as well. My email's on the slides. But if anything, feel free to reach out, and happy to talk through your posters.
Thanks so much, Kate.
All right.
Thank you,
everybody.
Fantastic.
Thank you so much.
Bye.